So here's the thing. We act too suddenly a lot of times, and we speak too suddenly. So anyway, the Lord's really just challenging me too on that, is just that learning to wait even more. So when God says he's taking us to another level, listen, you can't take anybody to a level you haven't been yourself. And so every level is requiring that much more of waiting and entering into that rest. And it truly is. Because we want to speak with wisdom. We want to speak with the full counsel of God as he speaks to us. We don't want to give somebody something in part, which, we have done things in part. But isn't it better to get the full counsel of God and to release the full counsel and wisdom of God in the right time and in the right season? So there's a couple of scriptures. The Lord has just really been teaching me to keep my mouth shut when it needs to be shut and to open it when it needs to be open. But, the scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it says there's a time to keep silence and then there's a time to speak. But also listen to this in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 2. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, which is eternal, and thou upon the earth, the temporal. Therefore let thy words be few. But it also says in Proverbs 8, now this is wisdom speaking, here, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. So, that's just my challenge this morning, because it's been my challenge from the Lord too in the last month or so particularly, is there's times to make haste, but there's times to pull back and not be hasty. The other thing too about speaking doesn't John exhort us to test the spirits? Because God may be speaking to us, but is requiring us to press in to get the full counsel of what he's saying. So that you have that timing. So in that timing of waiting, in the midst of that comes the hastiness, comes the human ambition that will cause us now to begin to speak mixture. See how important that is to wait? To wait on God to get his full counsel, to understand what he is saying, to understand the eternal perspective that he is bringing. Because the mixture brings in the eternal and the temporal. It's not bringing in the full eternal. And, again, it goes along with what Apostle Greg was saying last night. He was making the difference between the eternal and the temporal. And he was talking about how we are eternal beings and how God, truly, you guys, we are a remnant people. We are part of the remnant. Hasn't our journey been the last several years, God giving us and taking us more into the eternal perspective? And that's the kingdom age, and living in the eternal in the kingdom age and bringing that to earth. We talk about bringing heaven to earth, but the eternal is what he's working in us. The horizontal looking the vertical looking to the Lord, and not the horizontal looking upon the earth of looking back and forth and right and left. Looking at all the temporal things around us and the temporal situations that we're in, the circumstances. Because we often make decisions based on the things that we're going through and based on even our own knowledge. So hasn't God been taking us out of our own reasoning? So this has been the part of that journey. And I texted Apostle Greg this morning. I said, I really appreciated his message last night. It's essential. How do we get that eternal perspective, you guys? It's waiting on God, and it's also going through the death process. Has he not been doing that in us? You have to go through that death process and get rid of all. Remember, I talked a couple meetings ago, God is shaking everything that can be shaking. All of the temporal, he is shaking out of our hands, and he's shaking off of our life so that which is eternal will remain. And so that's what I'm challenging us on today is that waiting on God and really, really moving into that rest. And there's confidence in that rest, you guys. There's total confidence in God, in our walk with God and with God in that place of rest. And when we're there, then we're able to give the full, understand God's heart fully, understand God's intentions fully before we speak. You know, that, to me, that's been a real challenge in the last couple months.
You know what I see with that waiting and hastiness is because I've been doing that sorting work in on that familiar spirit, and how the enemy always wants to get out ahead of what God's doing. And so when I'm looking at that waiting and being hasty, it's really waiting on the Lord to hear His thing versus hearing something that we might want to hear, or that, you know, the enemy knows exactly how to press our little buttons, and so he knows what he can say that we would like to jump on. And so he's always trying to put that word out ahead of time that kind of sounds like it'd be the right thing, but it really isn't what the Lord's got to say. So I find that too, but I've been noticing in the last week or two, the Lord's just having me just pause. I hear that thing and I just pause. I go, is that really you? I'm just waiting here a little longer.
Yeah, see, and that's what we have to do. Again, that takes away that hastiness. You know, that's just kind of a key word that's saying, don't be hasty, don't be hasty. You know,
Yesterday morning, Sean Honold posted something about that on Facebook, that the enemy is just working really hard trying to get us out ahead of God. And I had seen it in a dream, and so when he posted, I thought, yeah, that's why I've been feeling like I've been feeling. And even like I said during worship, I just felt like I wanted to run. And I said, here's this place where I felt this before during the last 3 years, where I just had this jitter-like stuff, wiry. I just wanted to run. I wanted to go somewhere, but I knew I had no place to go. God wasn't assigning me anywhere. And that's that very feeling. When you feel that need to rush, and there's just something churning in you, and you're just all keyed up. And then there's even the feeling like the butterflies you get before something happens, you know, like you're going to be speaking or whatever. You get that butterfly feeling inside of you. But it was strong yesterday while the worship thing was going on. The enemy even wanted us to rush in our worship, rush in the praise last night as the bass was going. And there was a place where Cece even got up and exhorted everybody. This is a place of warfare. Even though it's silent or quiet or music and low-keyed, this is a vital thing to be in this place of just really worshiping the Lord for who He is. That's the best warfare you can do. And so, you know, as you lean into that in those waiting times, that's the best thing, is to stay focused on the Lord and stay in that place of praise and worship. I don't want to take away from where you're going. I just want to throw this in if you want to make notes and really look at these. Psalm 57, 58, and 59. You know, for the last month, I've been talking about Psalm 59 and God finishing the thing with evil men. But it actually starts with Psalm 57, and David is talking about that very thing of the enemy being so strong in what they're doing, but yet God hasn't spoken to you. And so you're pulling back. And the name of all three of these Psalms, when you get into the meaning of the name, it means do not destroy, or the one who does not destroy. So he's leaning into God who does not destroy for no apparent reason. But these wicked evil men are coming against David without reason, without cause. He has not transgressed. He has not sinned. He is without iniquity. But those who are with iniquity are always trying to rush things, because then they know they can take the advantage. Because now in the iniquity, they can bring a charge against you in the courts of God. So you can see Satan, you know, I've been comparing it with Job in the first 2 chapters of Job, how the enemy is constantly trying to go after Job to get him ahead of God. And what was it that Job saw but the very finishing of all the things, of the words of evil and the works of evil? And so even as we are pressing to finish these things in our state, we have to be even, you know, we could say cautious, but that's not even the right word. Cautious to me tends to have a bit of fear in it. This is more truly that really waiting on God, so you know that God's flame is going out ahead of us, and finishing things that we can't finish.
I remember years ago, I don't know if you guys know who Warren Wiersbe is. Years ago, he wrote a book that said, God is not in a hurry. You know, honestly, if you think about that, God's not in a hurry, but the enemy is, and that's part of that agitation. That's part of that stirring. It's kind of like flittering around and not finding a place to rest and all of that, and it's just that hurry-scurry all the time. But as long as we're hurrying and scurrying, you know, you're not still enough to even hear the voice of God. But it's also, it's something that supernatural that God does in the midst of the waiting that we don't really understand. It's that transforming thing. It's that thing of also bringing us much deeper into his heart that he does. He does that in the midst of waiting. He does that as we give him the due respect of who he is to wait and listen to him and let him transform. He does that supernatural thing where you can go 1 month one way and you're waiting on God for full counsel on something, or waiting on God for a firm transformation within you, a settled place. You know, this doesn't have to take a long time, and Apostle Greg hit on this last night. It doesn't have to take, this transformation God does in the midst of this does not have to take a long time. It really is dependent upon our own yieldedness. You know, God can transform in a day, but he does something supernatural out of our yieldedness and our obedience to him, desiring to get the full counsel. Here's the other thing, too. When we act and we speak in haste, it not only harms others, it's also harming ourselves in a lot of ways.
Apostle Greg talked about this. In the waiting, you're required to go deeper into the Lord's heart. So see, he's even planned for a time when you're really have a grace on your life to really go deeper in him. So instead of having that angst feeling, that hurried feeling, you go into that deeper understanding of his rest and peace, into a greater place of trust in him. In these Psalms of David, he just leaned on the mercy and the truth of God. And I just love that in those 3 Psalms, 57, 58, and 59, he's talking about how as you lean into that merciful God, he is going to deliver you. He is going to set you free from all that wickedness and evil. But it's in the knowing him deeper that it sets you free. It's in knowing him deeper that you're set free. And so that's his design all along. It isn't in the battle even that comes. It's like our worship and praise, like we've always known. You get the victory in the worship and praise first, and then God takes you into the battle. And so knowing God deeper, even to me, supersedes even the praise. So that's our quest here. We've learned all those different stages, but now he's taking us into his very character, his very nature. And as we lean into that, then we become just like him. And in that, then, we go into worship and praise. There it is again, being that servant of God, our whole premise of why we're worshiping. Because we've gone deeper to know him. We have a deeper place of praise. We have a deeper place of battle. We have a deeper place than of victory. And as Apostle Greg pointed out, that's why we can then sustain the victory. So it's really important that we have that full fulcrum, that because we know him deeper, we can do this whole process and we will be able to sustain it. So that even as others are coming in anew because of the work that's been done, we can sustain the work and it will not be affected by those coming in new, because they won't take us out of balance, because we have that greater kabod in God, in knowing him and in knowing ourselves. And when he brought that out last night, I went, yes, that's what I'm looking for, because I don't know about you, I'm tired of my work being kind of washed out. And this will this will be one of those things where as we know him deeper, then we hold even steadier through that whole process, but then also we steward that process on the outside, bringing that strength into other people's lives to know God at that deep level too. And then they won't give up as easily on that. Yeah.
I would like to add a little testimony to that. During the last few days, I noticed that initially there was very strong distractions, demonic distractions, and I realized that my whole intent to overcome those was actually unfruitful, because the attention was on the distraction, it was not on the Lord. And there came a place when I realized my worship was really conversation and relationship with the Lord, and everything else didn't matter. And at that point, it was just a complete transformation. I mean, my whole attention was on him, and those distractions really, they popped up a little bit and disappeared, and they didn't really matter anymore. And it brought me into a completely new place with him. And it's exactly that what Peggy and Julie were talking about is, do you have your attention on him, not on everything around, not on your circumstances, whatever you are facing. Have your attention on him. And in that is the depth, and in that is the victory. Praise God.
His breath can come and lift us out of anything. And also it's a matter of sustaining what God is bringing. Where the focus of our eyes, the key thing too is the focus of our eyes, and are they heavenward, and looking for God. I wanted to, Apostle Greg said to me this morning just in a text, because I had texted him about the message last night. He said eternal perception reduces disappointment as well and allows confidence in the journey. So it's a journey, The deeper we go into his heart, the more confidence we have in who we are in him as eternal beings. And that confidence is great. We truly are his great expectation on the earth, of heaven coming to earth. We are truly his great expectation. The Lord told me one day, the great expectation of me is the expectation of you. But God has full confidence to bring us into this place. And anyway, this is the journey that we're talking about. It's the journey we've been on. So it's not a foreign thing. And if you listen to his message from last night, you'll understand. It just helped for me to put into perspective of just exactly the words of what he was saying, just of exactly how that journey has been.